You die once and suddenly you're not invisible. Explore the story of Heed, who was a corpse for a while but is back to life and trying to learn about just what had happened, only to discover the story is far stranger than that. Inspired by manga, Alter X Artifact is a new LGBTQ+ webcomic for mature readers revolving around magic and political espionage. This comic features fantastic elements, gripping storytelling, and impressive visuals that pull you into the strange but fascinating world of the comic. Alter X Artifact explores themes of magic, dreams, and relationships, all while deftly weaving a compelling mystery with eye-catching visuals. You're still in time to enjoy the exciting prologue as well, but you gotta hurry over onto the website. So, if you're looking for your next weekly webcomic read, you need to go to alterxartifact.com. That is alterxartifact.com. Now back to the show. No, I'm with you there because I had like an ulcer at like 10 years old, so like I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, mine was in high school actually, so that's fun. All right. Hello and welcome to Supernatural Selection. I'm your host Kevin the Bastard. With me this week are Mike the Skeptic. Mike, how you doing?
Well, I don't have heartburn right now, so I guess I'm winning.
Hey, that's a plus. And we've got Mr. David Davis. David, how are you doing?
I also don't have heartburn, which is a blessing.
Thank God. All right. Or Eris or any god or goddess you want to thank.
Oh, it was a blessing. Didn't say where it was from.
Yeah, it could be from Satan.
Could be Godzilla.
Ooh. The first Church of Godzilla should be a thing.
It's got God right there in the name.
It's
So.
true. Oh, wow. Never thought of that. So, before we get going, let's take a look at some housekeeping here. First off, we have got a new series called The Distraction Hole that is currently updating on our Patreon. And, David, I believe you said after this episode, it'd be a great idea if we just start putting it in the feed with this show.
Yeah, what we're doing is each of us is hosting an episode to kind of like try out the format. I think it's gone really well. I figure after we do this next one, which is a Mike episode, which, a lot's riding on you, Mike.
All right, it's now announced, so I guess I have to. I actually wrote stuff down now, so I think I'll be ready mostly.
There you go.
Slightly, partially.
But then, I think after that, we're going to put the show into the feed with Supernatural Selection, just because fuck it, we can.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It's all under the Supernat Pod banner, so...
It's added value.
Value added. More beans per can. So that's something to look forward to. And if you'd like to hear those first 3 episodes, you can hear them free on our Patreon. Speaking of, if you would like bonus episodes and access to early episodes and at higher levels, actual merchandise, you can join us on patreon.com/supernatpod. I think that's it. Or you can go to patreon.supernatpod.rocks. And I just want to take a second. We haven't done this in a little while. We haven't had new folk in a bit, but I'm sorry. There's a cat directly in front of the screen now. Thank you, Conti. So, thank you to our patrons, Man in Black, Mr. Eric Arqueen, Dave Holyfield, Holly, Ruth Ann Beverly, and Andrew Richardson. Guys, thank you so much for your donations and helping out. It is awesome, and you give us a giant smile on our faces, and you give us money every month.
Hell yeah. Speaking of Patreon, though, we also do have a new Supernatural Sources.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Just went up tonight.
Yeah. To tie in with today's subject, which we'll get to in a second, I recorded a Supernatural Sources where I'm reading from a public domain story, so it's all above board and legal.
Yep.
So, no lawsuits for us.
No lawsuits a pending.
No Nintendo ninjas.
No. Yeah, I've heard some stories. They've been busy this week, the lawyers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll leave that though.
That'll be for the other show.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't want to piss off anyone that might send the Pinkertons.
Who are
Right.
still around, which is amazing.
Yeah, I
and
also saw
terrifying.
a story of who was it?
It was Wizards of the Coast.
Yes,
Mike,
so it's
and
Wizards of the Coast sending Pinkertons to someone.
I'm just sitting here going, damn it, Arthur.
Which I guess technically I was kind of a Pinkerton
Kinda.
because I worked for the same company.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah,
You damn Pinkerton.
for like 7 years. something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, you did for a while.
I was just some security chump.
Yeah. So this week, we're going to be swinging away from aliens. We're going to be swinging away from cults and bizarre fake religions. We're going to be talking about spooky things.
I thought you were
This is
talking
kind
about,
of a ghost theme, but also not.
thought we were just going to be swinging.
Ooh.
Oh, that's for Distraction Hole.
That's ooh boy, no, that's for that show that Clark hosts. Now, so we're going to talk this week about La Llorona.
La Llorona.
Dios mia.
My Sharona?
My Bologna.
La Llorona?
Yeah. So, David, what can you tell us about La Llorona?
Well, we're going to be taking a little bit of a dive into the subject of La Llorona. I could have easily said a whole lot more about it, but we'll get into that. So the fun thing about this week's topic is that there was no lack of material for research.
Oh, that's always great.
The bad thing about this week's topic is that there was entirely too much material for research.
A blessing and a curse.
And I had to really force myself not to turn this into a series.
Yeah, I think we can start calling that episode creep.
At least every episode that I write has that very real risk of creeping into multiple. So,
Well, you know, I didn't think I would, but here we are.
Episode feature creep.
Yep.
so you know, the fucked up part about all this is that it's still technically part of a series that we'll probably explore. Because La Llorona fits into a larger archetype seen around the world, so that's fun.
Yeah, I think at this point we're just doing sub-series about sub-series about sub-series, right?
So, you know, I'm fortunate that like most of my sources this week are from academic databases I can access through the college I work at. So everything's been peer-reviewed, which is a nice change of pace compared to some of the insane bullshit we read week to week.
Oh, you lucky son of a bitch. I have been reading about the Archons this week. And it's dumber than Zachariah Sitchin.
Like, we read a lot of self-published stuff, and I'm not saying that self-published is bad, but a lot of the self-published stuff we read is absolute garbage because that's the only way you could get that stuff out there.
Yeah, when you're your own editor, quality is not on the forefront.
Quality with a KW.
Yeah. Quality.
Quality.
Brain and eats eucalyptus.
Oh my god, you just gave me a great idea. We need to have a special little character called the Quality Koala.
There you go.
He's pissed off and just has syphilis.
He's our editor, the syphilitic Quality Koala.
Well, we can make like a workplace accident, like cryptid.
Kevin, and you know what the name of the koala is?
What?
Kowalski.
Ooh, I like this.
So I will have some other sources as well, less academically rigorous for like turns of phrase or whatnot that I'll bring up throughout the episode as well. You know, because you can't just read like dry papers, which, you know, I tend to go and dry a lot.
Yeah, you gotta lube that shit up.
You're raw dogging.
Yeah, so there's some fun little websites and that sort of thing. Of course, you always have to like check the quality, but there you go.
Of course.
But here comes the list. My primary sources this week include La Llorona as a Social Symbol by Michael Kearney, published in 1969. I use this one with some caveats.
Okay.
Anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
I'm just making a guess.
No,
No, that's what I've been reading.
Yeah, that's the aliens.
Yeah. So we also have The Wailing Woman by Ida H. Adis, who we're going to talk about a lot in this episode, actually.
Now, that's the one that's actually about, oh my God, forget it. I forgot that. Janis Joplin. There we go. It's about Janis Joplin. There you go.
Yeah, I don't even have Janis
that.
Joplin in the script when I could have done that. So thank you for. That's also the story that I read that's on Supernatural Sources.
Right.
If you want to hear my terrible Spanish beyond what you're going to hear tonight, there's your bonus. I also have Absolving La Llorona by Renee H. Trevino.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence for a Developing Variant of La Llorona by Ed Walraven.
A very succinct title.
Mm-hmm. Very.
Wailing Women of Folklore by Robert A. Barakat.
Now that one's got some pizzazz.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, Thomas A. Janvier's Legends of the City of Mexico.
See, that just sounds cool.
Yeah. It's a great, I'll send you the PDF, although that's technically, I guess,
No,
fraud.
don't do that. Don't do that.
No, it's fair. So I will send you snippets. There we go.
There you go. Mm-hmm. It may be a snippet of the whole book, but still.
I think I'm legally allowed to distribute 10 pages. So we'll figure that out. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into La Llorona a little bit. So what do you two know about La Llorona?
Mike, I'm going to let you go first.
Other than puns about the song My Sharona, nothing.
Okay. My entire experience has been through TikTok videos of Mexican guys driving trucks on ill-lit night dirt roads and then coming upon a wailing, crying woman in a white dress and then someone screaming, Dios mío! And backing up at high speed back down the road while the woman runs after them. Mm-hmm, that's it. That's my entire experience with La Llorona.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's also been a shit ton of movies, right? One of my favorite horror universe continuities is the Conjuring universe, even though I only maybe 2 or 3 movies in there. But La Llorona is one of those. There is the subject of one of those movies in that franchise. But yeah, there's so many of them. You can hop on Shudder, and I'm surprised I don't have a La Llorona category. It's just there's been so many.
So you're saying Pluto TV could have a La Llorona channel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised there's one playing right now.
Okay, that's fair.
So the thing about what we have going on here compared to other spectral, ghostly subjects that we have covered and that we will cover, this tale is folklore. There's no real incident that we could trace back to being the source of the ghost or anything like that. This is stories of ghostly encounters are just that. They're stories.
Right.
There doesn't appear to be a historical figure we can really connect to any hauntings. Just pure folklore territory, kind of like how when we handled the American cryptids, right?
Right.
Again, these are just stories that are passed around, and there are associations that we can make, but there's no definitive canon, historical. This is who the Wailing Woman was. This is when she died.
Yeah, I just really hope this doesn't go back to taxidermy somehow.
Yeah, for real, right? Those poor kids. With that said, though, this is also really interesting because belief in a real La Llorona is pervasive. People have claimed to have had ghostly encounters with her. And I would say that La Llorona may be the ghost of the Americas, given how widespread the imagery is regionally.
Well, you know what? Screaming and wailing women seem to be a cultural hallmark all over the world, and I'm just glad our continent has one.
Well, it's more than one, actually. We'll get into that a little bit, but yeah, we also are going to have to look at the broader archetype, and I don't intend that as a pun.
Right, broad. Oh my God.
So
now, before we go on, I have a question that I didn't have a place to really throw this in. Is this in any way related to the Banshee?
That's when we cover the larger idea of the Wailing Woman, we'll get into the Banshee, but that's
all right.
Also a kind of a separate thing. But it's in the same wheelhouse. You know what I mean?
They
meet at the
different.
convention. They meet at the convention every year.
Okay.
They have their presentations, how to best freak out people. You know,
Okay.
what to do about TikTok, a seminar. So here we have this folkloric figure who is an essential story for many cultures, ranging from indigenous tribes of Mexico to the Mestiza and Chicano cultures of the American Southwest. On that note, I will do my best to be accurate and appropriate regarding this cultural aspect. I'm really going to be pulling out what I remember from my Chicano study classes here. I live in Southern California. My Spanish is enough to get around and get by, but my pronunciation is awful. So, yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you right now, Mike, you can back me up here. I really know one phrase in Spanish, and that is, ¿Dónde es aquí?
Yeah. And I failed a lot of Spanish in high school. So.
Yeah, I think both of us didn't do... Well, my Spanish teacher couldn't speak Spanish, so I had to do was pronounce it better than her.
Well, I had her too, but see, here's the thing, just as a tangent. I thought about this recently, is that I did poorly in language studies in high school because it's one of those things that actually benefits from doing homework. And I despised homework.
Yeah.
Every other class I could pass tests without doing homework. But Spanish, or any language really, you need that kind of rote repetition to drill it in. And
Yeah.
I just,
Why Latin, Mike?
that was my mom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
never
did
mind.
not choose Latin.
Is this something to do with Catholicism?
No, I
Okay.
just think it was like, it was a misguided, so I took Latin my first year of high school, and my mom had chose my things. I don't know why I didn't go. I guess she didn't think I had to go, and she had to choose my classes. But she thought it would be easy because it's, all languages come, or all Western languages come, or a majority, I should say all, but majority of Western languages come from Latin, so therefore it's probably easy, right?
Look, motherfucker, we all come from fish, and I don't breathe underwater, do I?
And then we all laugh. Yeah. So,
Yeah, so, like, the most laconic form of the legend of La Llorona is this. She is the weeping woman. This is her central trait, and what changes is around that core image.
Oh yeah, I remember her from Left 4 Dead. The witch you didn't want to disturb from crying.
Do
Otherwise,
not startle the witch.
Yes.
Yeah, like the witch
startled the witch,
borrows
Ray.
heavily from that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty. I mean, there's probably all kinds of stuff that borrow from the iconic imagery of this
Folklore.
So I'm going to go ahead and quote from an introduction to La Llorona published on the blog of the Library of Congress from the American Folklife Center and Veterans History Project, written by Stephen Winnick in 2021.
All right.
Okay, so, quote, "Looking through such stories, you'll find many variations. Sometimes La Llorona sees you from afar and pursues you, terrifying you as you flee toward your home. Sometimes she appears riding a horse. Sometimes she appears in your horse-drawn wagon or in your car, warning you against bad behavior before disappearing, just like that other famous spirit, the vanishing hitchhiker. In some stories, an encounter with her is fatal. La Llorona is often closely associated with children. In some stories, she is said to wail for her own lost or dead children. In many of these stories, she killed her own children when she was alive and is doomed for her actions to be a wandering ghost. In other stories, she appears mainly to women who have children, while still in others, she kidnaps children who are never seen again."
It's a lot of variation.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a lot of those variations, but like there's some pretty like standard DNA for a lot of this. Okay, so you have the weeping
Right.
woman. She's usually warning, or she is a symbol of warning. There's usually children involved. Now, whether or not she kills her children or not, that can vary as well. And there's also the associations with water, which that didn't really even get into, but that's a whole other thing.
That's almost like the stuff from Asian culture.
Yeah, and like, again, all of this is super universal.
Yeah, and some, I don't know exactly where when this impression formed, but every time I think of when Kevin, the little bit he did tell me beforehand or of La Llorona, I think of Sadako.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I
From
totally
The
see
Ring.
where you're going with that as well. It's still like a different thing, but
Oh,
it's
yeah,
still like
obviously.
it's got that DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the story of La Llorona is iconic in a real sense because of the associated images and themes which carry across regions where the tale is told. However, there are all these variations within the general lore. So La Llorona has been seen as a vengeful figure, as a tragic figure, and as a predatory figure. In some cases, she is the tragic victim of conquistadores and colonialism. In others, she is a sad siren who lures men to their deaths. Compounding this is that it is a story about a woman, and this carries all sorts of interpretations and biases to these stories and interpretations.
And of course, different ones depending on the era.
So, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but women tend to have a very specific, like, ideas and interpretations forced upon them by society and culture that can be stifling and often reductive. Like, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's, in our society, yes, but in South America, it's still, more what we would think of as traditional or, old school.
Yeah.
They're a bit, I don't want to say behind. I'm trying to think of a way to put this magnanimously, but I would say their ideas are more,
Like, steeped in, like, older tradition.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and the other thing, like, I wanted to get into this a little bit, but I'm not brave enough to get into it just yet because it was a lot of it was like trying to figure out how to phrase it. But like this idea of machismo and
Yeah.
Right.
again, like in Chicano culture,
It's
there
definitely-
there is an issue with how women are
Yes.
represented. So, like how all that connects to this, but I just couldn't figure out a way to like really articulate it. But that is like kind of an undercurrent to some of these interpretations, I feel like.
Yeah.
But-
I can see that.
It's all like you said, I don't know that I'd be brave enough to jump into all that though.
Yeah, unless you really know your shit, it's quite the shark-infested pond to stick your toes
Certainly a minefield.
Yeah, we're a supernatural podcast, not a sociology podcast. So,
Indeed.
so any other thoughts, Kevin, before I jump in?
I'm sure I have no idea what you're talking about, what with us living in the South and in today's America and everything. So,
No,
yeah,
perfectly straightforward and wonderful opinions on women in the South.
Indeed.
So, before we dive too deeply into La Llorona and the variations and that sort of thing, like as a supernatural entity, I kind of want to discuss someone essential to spreading the story who has a fascinating story of her own. Like this was just something that it happens during research and the connections come together. So we're going to take a little bit of a tangent, but I think you'll both see that like there's kind of a reason I'm doing this. So one of my sources was by an author named Ida Hillis Adis. And I looked into her background and I found a lot of interesting stuff here. So, born in 1857, Ida Hillis Adis is not the originator of the legend of La Llorona, as variations have been found dating back centuries in Central America. However, she is a central figure into the spread and adoption of the legend in the United States, and her story is kind of tragic and mysterious. So I am going to draw mostly from a Wikipedia article on her just to kind of get the timeline. I went through and I checked the sources and everything like that. Because again, like you got to do your research. You can't just copy Wikipedia, right? But I'm using it as kind of like the outline and structure here. So I vetted it the best I can, as it does a good job of outlining her life and experiences.
Okay.
Now, Ida H. Adis is widely considered to be the first American writer to translate Mexican oral stories and histories into English, many of which were published by the Argonaut, which is a newspaper in San Francisco.
Now, I'm just going to say I really feel like I need to get this in my library. alongside my copy of Yeats' Irish Fairy and Folk Tales. If you're a writer and you don't collect stuff about folk tales, you might want to start.
Well, and also speaking of sources, one of the sources that I used for this, which was the Oral History of Mexico, I think it was, that's on Project Gutenberg, and that has a ton of like stories and ghosts and creatures from Mexico City. So that's linked here in the document. I linked a bunch of stuff where I could. So there you go.
Cool, awesome.
So Yida was born in 1857 in Leavenworth, Kansas, and as a child would move to Chihuahua, Mexico, at the outbreak of the Civil War. Now, her father, photographer Alfred Shea Adis, who himself is a significant and problematic figure, would introduce Yida to the western frontier, taking her to the wilderness, to villages, and all the like all over Mexico and California.
Interesting.
So at 15, she moved to Los Angeles, and later graduated in the first class of Los Angeles High School, one of the first of 7 total students.
Holy crap, really? LA High School? Isn't that still around?
Well, I mean, I'm sure
or
like there's
a version of it.
Right. I'm just thinking of like how many, I think like there's 1 million kids or a couple million kids in the school district in LA right now. So like, it's weird to think about that.
One of the first 7.
Now, Yida was a writer who was notable for being one of the earlier examples of a successful travel writer, which was a bit of a novelty for the 1800s. Think like Anthony Bourdain, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and those always sold well because people didn't travel that much.
So she was most notable for her short stories drawn from Mexican oral sources, and her writings would be published in many papers across the U.S. and Mexico. While she mostly published under the Argonaut for a while, these newspapers would send stuff out to other people and everything like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like the, the Associated Press, that kind of thing, where you get your story from the AP Wire and it's published all over the world in different papers.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if like some newspaper guy from back east gets a copy of something from back west and just publishes it without like permission, right? There's no real organizations that are controlling this stuff. Anyway, now Yida has a fascinating life that suits her to tell the tale of La Llorona. Around the mid-1880s, the publisher of the Argonaut introduced Yida to one John G. Downey, a man in his 60s and the former governor of the state of California.
Dang.
Adis and Downey were soon engaged, but Downey's sisters, learning this, shanghaied him to Ireland.
What the hell?
So my guess is it was a money thing. Like they did not want anyone else getting that like nest egg.
I was gonna say it could be some form of racism. Who knows?
Well, she isn't like Latino.
Oh, sure, but she lives in Mexico.
She's like she had a tan, so like holy shit, right?
Oh no.
So
she's not snowy white.
Right?
Get her brother away.
So what Adis would do is she would sue for breach of promise and leave for Mexico City to write for the newspaper Two Republics.
Okay.
While there, she caught the eye of the editor Theodore Gesterfeld, whose wife sued him for divorce, naming Yida as the co-defendant. Because she assumed Yida and Theodore were together.
Yeah.
Now, Gesterfeld did admit to adultery, but not with Yida.
Damn.
Right?
Damn son.
So then Yida would soon move to Santa Barbara for a writing job and met Charles Stork, and the two would eventually marry.
It's quite the menagerie of names.
Now, however, Yida later claimed that Stork and his teenage son, Tommy, were violently abusive towards her. So Stork overcompensated for this by suing her because she was insane. And I put that in big air quotes.
Can you really sue for you're crazy? I'm going to sue you.
I wish. There's plenty of people I would sue for that.
Sure.
So
I'm not going to name names, but Trump.
So Yida lost this trial, and she made the suggestion that her attorney, Grant Jackson, was working for Stork the whole time.
And who the hell's going to believe her? Because she just lost a trial that said she was
And then
crazy.
also she's a woman.
Yes. She's
the most fucked up
hysterical. Her
part,
uterus is attacked in her brain.
So obviously it was like a low point for her. So Yida did what anyone would do and broke into her lawyer's home, wielding 238s and firing at least once into the floor.
I mean,
Fuck?
you know, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, sure. Okay. This is very southern sounding, though.
Right? It has a very southern gothic quality. Like Faulkner could have wrote this.
Yes, I was going
Holy
to say
shit!
this.
Holy shit! I'm getting Sound and Fury flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking this is a Tennessee Williams play.
Right? So she ends up going to jail, and she spent 8 months in prison. She was then later sentenced to serve a year for a libel case, likely related to her claims about her lawyer, Jackson.
Probably.
And she would serve 10 months for that.
So 18 months total.
Meanwhile...
That's a long time, really, when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, and it's not even over yet. So,
Oh, God.
meanwhile, her divorce from Stork was not settled. Part of what she wanted was $500 a month in alimony. Instead, because shit is fucked, it had been widely suggested that Stork had Yida committed to an insane asylum.
Oh, boy.
And
Oh, boy.
Right? And it is suggested that in 1901, she escaped that asylum.
Where the hell's a movie about this? Fuck Marvel. I want the crazed writers of the 19th century cinematic
there's-
universe where they all team up and fight Martians.
Look, I think it just speaks to the, you know, in a kind of a distraction hole tangent, it speaks to the intellectual brain drain. What am I trying to think of? The lack of creativity in Hollywood. This, and there was another one about like the former slave who like ended up stealing a Confederate boat and like.
Oh, yeah.
Smalls, I think, was his last name.
Yes.
But yeah, there aren't movies about these motherfuckers.
But
Get like they're remaking like Harry Potter, and they're remaking like they're trying to redo. Oh, what was the one I just found out? There's a movie that they're attempting to remake.
yeah, I know, and I was very mad about it.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, there's just all these reboots and remakes, and it's like, do something original, motherfuckers.
Yeah, I would love to see this biopic, especially if you get like a really quirky director like Wes Anderson. Could you imagine Wes Anderson doing the story?
God damn it.
Kevin has issues with Wes.
I really
Of
do.
course, Kevin has issues with Wes Anderson.
Fuck you.
I like a few of his things. Like I saw Grand Budapest. I thought it was fine.
I'd rather see Terry Gilliam.
No, see, like this story is weird enough that like Wes Anderson could mine a lot from it. Like Bill Murray would show up. Like Bill Murray would probably be the lawyer.
Oh, I was thinking he'd actually be the former California governor, but
You know, something like that. But then have it done in that Wes Anderson's visual style. Like I especially
Oh, you
because
mean
like
boring
it's like,
and symmetrical?
I will choose to ignore that anyway.
Okay.
With that said, though, this asylum escape may not actually be the case. There's some evidence that she may have likely changed her name and moved to Laredo, Texas, eventually dying in 1941, but dying in an asylum in San Antonio.
God damn, you can take the nut from the nut house, but you can't take the nut house out of the nut.
He's dying in an asylum in San Antonio. Sounds like the worst way to go.
I know.
At least it was like a
does.
1940 asylum compared to like a 1910 asylum.
Yeah, but weren't they still driving around in the lobotomy mobile with like an ice pick and a mallet?
Yeah,
That's true. But then also, like, I'm not sure if they mean asylum as in the like woo or
There's
more
only
like,
one kind of asylum.
well,
back
not
then.
necessarily, because there were some asylums that were kind of like health retreats.
No, those were spas.
That was a sanatorium.
That was a sanatorium, not a sanitarium.
Okay. But so the strange thing is, like, you know, she changed her name and everything, right? Supposedly, this figure who died in San Antonio was named Adelaida Hillis Jackson, the same surname of the attorney that she held at gunpoint.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's like a lot of weird stuff here, but like again, like I know that this was a tangent, but if anyone's going to like translate the story of La Llorona and bring it to the US, it's her.
Definitely.
Because again, like we're talking about like themes, right? And then like the role of women, everything like that. Here's an example of a tragic woman.
Tragic wronged woman writing about a tragic wronged woman. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about La Llorona, like the subject of our episode. So,
finally getting around to that.
Right. It is likely that the origins of La Llorona predate Hispanic influence in Central America and Mexico.
This makes sense.
Mm-hmm. For example, the Florentine Codex, originating from the early 1500s in Mexico, features a passage, quote, "The sixth omen was that many times a woman would be heard going along weeping and shouting. She cried out loudly at night, saying, 'Oh, my children, we are about to go forever.' Sometimes she said, 'Oh, my children, where am I to take you?'" So you have that. And there's also some other associations. So, for example, there's connections to potentially an Aztec god here as well.
Now,
as you do.
And now, since this is paranormal and it involves a woman running around screaming about children, how does Aleister Crowley fit into this? just out of curiosity.
I don't think Aleister Crowley ever visited Mexico, and I think Mexico is thankful for that.
I know I would
just the smell, the sweaty anal sex smell of Aleister Crowley.
Oh boy. The only man whose breath permanently smells like someone else's asshole.
The man would leave a snail trail just walking down the street.
Mr. Crowley, excuse me, you appear to be dripping.
Yes, it's magical fluid.
Oh, God, I'm going to make cakes with it.
Jesus.
Aleister Crowley is going to be a fun one, but I digress.
Oh, yeah. Let's get back to where we were.
But for most interpretations and variations on the tale, it seems to become a symbolic representation of the exploitation of indigenous groups by the conquistadores.
And that makes a lot of sense because there are so many stories in native North, Central, and South America involving ghost women. Mm-hmm. There are tons. Speaking just from my great-grandmother who was Choctaw, she would tell me stories about that shit.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think we need to spend much time conveying the history of the conquistadores in the New World.
I think we know.
Yeah, still, like, long story short, since the 15th century, the Spanish would frequently travel to what is Central America and abuse the region's indigenous population. This was often in the form of rape and forced intermarriage between conquistadores and native women, when enslavement and outright murder weren't going on.
Yeah, basically, the conquistadors were after three things: rape, gold, and bananas.
Mm-hmm. So if your high school neglected to teach you any of this, you probably had a shitty high school history class like those offered in Florida right now.
Or you grew up in the 80s, and I know in my schools we were taught that Europeans and the Indians, we were all friends until the savage nature of the natives kicked in. Oh, God, I feel like I need a shower after that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I especially like because when I was growing up, it was a lot like take the story of Columbus. I think I had gotten to like middle school when like the discussion on Columbus began to change, and it was more like, well, this guy is a real fuck up, and he did a lot of bad things.
Yeah, there's a really good series starting on Our Fake History about that very subject. So. Head over to Our Fake History if you want to hear Sebastian Major really lay down some fact about him.
I'm also going to throw out Behind the Bastards. He did like a 3 or 4 episode series on Columbus, which is
always Behind the Bastards.
Yeah. When Kevin and I were in school, Columbus was still, a great person. They talked highly of him, but
Yeah, the Dan Carlin great man.
Shortly thereafter, though, is when the real shit started to be talked about. I'd say right around the 2000s.
Yep.
Right, yeah, because Columbus, he is a great man in the capital G, like someone who is a historical figure who
in the same way Hitler was one of the great men. Yes.
He's a figure to be discussed, but not a figure to be exalted.
Yeah, and I think Kevin, you mentioned Dan Carlin.
Yes, the Dan Carlin quote great man,
aka one of the greatest podcasters on earth. Dan Carlin.
Jesus Christ, tell me about it.
So, the general idea of the La Llorona story revolves around it, and like the origins of it tend to revolve around an indigenous woman who was like raped or forced into marriage by a conquistador, and in turn murders her children after he abandons her.
Like they do.
That's like a core piece of the La Llorona story. Of course, there are a bunch of different interpretations, which we'll get into, but early documentation of the story of La Llorona is traced back to the 16th century in Mexico City, with tales of a, quote, hungry woman wailing for food. While not quite the same, this does indicate a larger archetype that we're going to talk about in a bit.
I think we could probably do a whole episode about hunger ghosts.
Yeah, hunger ghosts for sure. Now, the key thing is that all of these stories reflect the reality of the people at the time. Starvation, exploitation, abandonment, sexual assault. This wailing woman, a cry of female pain and rage comes from a very real place. Through metaphor, truth and history are preserved through the centuries. Now, one historical figure most often associated with La Llorona, and sometimes interpreted as the inspiration, was the 16th century figure La Malinfe, also known as Doña Marina. Now, she was a Nahua woman. Nahua, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's an indigenous group. Nahua?
I think it's either Nahua or Naha.
Naha?
I don't know
Yeah,
which.
I'm going to go with Naha.
Yes.
So she was a Naha woman who was known for contributing to what would be the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire.
Oh boy.
Serving roles as interpreter and advisor for Hernan Cortez. She was a slave and later consort to Cortez, giving birth to one of the first mestizos in what would become New Spain. And I put New Spain here in big quotes there. Now, mestizo, that refers to the interbreeding of these two different groups.
Natives and Spaniards, yes.
Yes. So she is a complicated figure, both sympathized with and villainized, and it's not a surprise to see how much she might get caught up in all the associations with this idea of the wailing woman.
Right. I mean, it totally tracks. Can also really hope cultural opinion doesn't affect your afterlife, because I'd hate to haunt our tequila section as El Blanco Nino.
And then thinking about this figure of Doña Marina, when I was taking Chicano Lit, there was a lot of discussion of like the Madonna horror complex.
Right, and that also plays into serial killers, but we're not going to go into that.
But yeah, like the idea that she kind of serves as the originator of an entire culture, but also simultaneously doomed a culture to a large degree. It's very complicated. And
also when that new culture is seen as an outcast to the original culture, you've got this whole stigma on both sides as well. So it's like being stuck between a rock and a turd, really.
It's like Run DMC said, it's tricky.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that reference, by the way.
There you go. So there are many variations to this tale that carry specific interpretations, as every region has its take and lesson to pull from the basic La Llorona story. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at two texts here that give us a broad overview of the figure. The first is Thomas A. Janvier's Legends of the City of Mexico, and then the second is The Wailing Woman by Ida H. Adis.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like a synthesized, if you remember your college English classes, a synthesis paper where you're taking two sources and kind of combining them into one thing.
Yes.
So, in Janvier's text, dated to 1910, an encounter with her, La Llorona, is described as such, quote, seeing her walking quietly along the quiet street at times when she is not running and shrieking for her lost children, she seems a respectable person, only odd-looking because of her white petticoat and white rebozo with which her head is covered, and anybody might speak to her, but whoever does speak to her in that very same moment dies.
Now, I want everybody to remember that if you see her profile on Tinder.
Swipe left, please.
Yes.
So, that's Janvier's text is very kind of very, very simplified. Right?
Okay.
Adis's is more of like a short story, creates a much more of a character here. Like
right, it's more of prose.
Mm-hmm, yes. So, quoting Adis's text, quote, I fancied I saw a woman's figure stealing along in its denser shadow, and I felt a thrill of compassion for her as one of the poor children of the night. She was not to be seen when we came near the spot, but a moment later a piercing cry rang out near us, a long-drawn wail of suffering and horror.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. Adis's text is very, very well written. Now, she describes the narrator's companion taking her by the hand and running from the woman to their confusion. So it's basically Adis's text when you listen to the supernatural sources. It's a frame story because you have the story of someone encountering this figure, then we get the backstory of who La Llorona is, and that sort of thing.
Right.
So Adis's text continues, quote, we were near one of the points where a watchman stands all night in the middle of the thoroughfare, and, following my companion's gesture, I saw the officer fallen upon his knees in the circle of light cast by his lantern. The great capuchin hood of his cape was pulled over his head, and every line of his figure betokened abject fear and horror. There was something uncanny in the sight, for the policemen of Mexico are not impressionable material. And through the silent, empty street, those dreadful cries still went ringing wildly, surely sufficient motive for such a display of terror. The sound seemed to float away, and down a by-street toward the equestrian statue of Charles IV, growing fainter and fainter in the distance. Let us go, said my companion. Yes, I am materialista, and I sneer at spiritualism and ghosts and phantoms, but nevertheless, I think there is not a man or woman in Mexico who would not tremble at the voice of Luisa La Llorona.
Interesting. Also creepy.
It's a wonderfully creepy story. It's also very beautiful. It's very, very tragic. Like, you get the sense of romance in all of this.
It's also very, I'm with you. It's very, there's a certain passion to it, as opposed to your more dry, creepy stuff like Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely better prose than Lovecraft.
And that's not hard.
Yeah. Now, Adis's text provides a more complete sort of backstory to La Llorona. Notice Luisa La Llorona.
I noticed that, yes.
Mm-hmm. Claiming her to be Luisa Haro and establishing the year 1584 as her origin point. There is no historical evidence of this. What we have with Adis's text is a sympathetic and more feminist reading of the figure who was spurned by the man who left her with children, who she witnesses getting married. In turn, she returns home and plunges a dagger into the chest of each of her small sons. Now
that's a Thursday.
It's a downer. It's a downer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So this quote from Adis's take says a lot to me. Quote, as the wailing woman ran that night, her cries aroused the city, and she was captured and recognized. With the dagger still clutched, and her blood-stained raiment, told a tragic story and gave the clue to the discovery of her victims. There was no penalty for man's inhumanity to woman in Mexico of those days, any more than in the present, and the poor, distracted instrument of crime paid all the temporal penalty in the case, while the actual murderer, in fact, rather gained popularity. So you hear what's going on there, right?
She was punished and he got away.
Yeah, because he was a wealthy landowner and that sort of thing. Again, that very kind of feminist reading of like, there wasn't much, there's no penalty for man's inhumanity to a woman in Mexico of those days any more than the present.
Interestingly, this kind of gives me a better view into how Zorro worked and why the idea of a rich man fighting for the downtrodden in that sort of society would be such a big deal.
I could definitely see that. Now, Janvier's take is different.
Oh, I bet.
Quote, the beginning of her was so long ago that no one knows when was the beginning of her. Nor does anyone know anything about her at all. But it is known certainly that at the beginning of her, when she was a living woman, she committed bad sins. As soon as ever a child was born to her, she would throw it into one of the canals which surrounded the city, and so would drown it. And she had a great many children, and this practice in regard to them she continued for a long time. At last her conscience began to prick at her about what she did with her children, but whether it was that the priest spoke to her or that some of the saints cautioned her in the matter, no one knows. But it is certain that because of her sinning, she began to go through the streets in the darkness, weeping and wailing. And presently it was said that from night till morning there was a wailing woman in the streets, and to see her, being in terror of her, many people went forth at midnight, but none did see her because she could only be seen when the street was deserted and she was alone.
Now, this begs a very important question real quick. First off, how many babies would you have to drown before finally your conscience got to you? Because I'm going with one.
I think even thinking about drowning a baby would be enough to get me to go like, no, I'm being a shitty person. I shouldn't do that.
Premeditating it seems kind of, sus.
And second, I've never heard of a serial killer that had, remorse. Just saying. You never hear about, like, John Wayne Gacy going, oh, I should have stopped at, 10.
Yeah.
But you know how it is.
It's like a can of Pringles. Once you pop, it can't stop.
Exactly.
That's what I was going to say.
It's like Lay's. Nobody can have just one.
But we're seeing what's going on with Janvier's take here,
yes.
Right? It's firmly again this idea of the wicked woman.
Mm-hmm. In the first story, the situation is put upon her by a horrid treatment by a man, and in the other one, she just a hoe.
Yeah, she just starts popping out babies and drowning them.
Yep.
So again, we have these two very different takes on the same tale with different elements to them. So for example, in Adas's text, it's a dagger.
Right.
In Janvier's text, it's drowning in the canals.
Which ties back into the water thing you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. So these are two, I would say, fairly standard interpretations of the figure that show different associated imagery to the figure over the centuries, but also the more interesting, different acknowledgement of the plight of women between them.
Mm-hmm.
In one text, she is a sinful woman. In the other, she's a jilted figure who was exploited, took revenge, and is more sympathetic.
And they both murdered children.
Yeah, they have that going for them.
Yeah, there's that. These two could probably, meet in the middle and be kind of okay with each other. Mm-hmm. But this is, it's interesting, Mike, you remember we used to go listen to Irish music at Fenians?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of, similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can as well. And I think, I don't remember my entire script off the top of my head, but I think we do get a little bit towards the Fae here at some point.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get there.
So, like any archetype, regionality comes into play and different interpretations develop. Basically, at the core, we have a jilted woman who kills her children and then kills herself, usually by drowning. But what that means varies from region to region. Please note, not an expert here. This is what I'm pulling from a multitude of sources.
Right. And I just want to throw in, this kind of reminds me of Black Dogs.
Yeah, again, like there's, is there like one
Regional
definite
variants.
dog murder that we could trace back historically? It's like, yep, that's the origin of the ghost.
Yep. It's a regional thing with variations. Yeah.
So obviously the most associated region with La Llorona is Mexico. She's often evoked to convey anxieties about water and is often used to scare children into not wandering off.
Right.
Now, even within Mexico, different locales have different emphases and themes. Michael Kearney, in the 1969 article from Western Folklore, indicates some variations revolve around themes of air, deception and treachery, abandonment, suffering, and fatalism. You have these different approaches.
Right.
Now, Guatemala has a localized version of a woman who had an affair and then drowned the resulting child. She would then be forced in the afterlife to search for her murdered son near bodies of water to the cry of "Ay, mijillo." Again, this story is often told to children.
Yeah. This is like
Being
the
a child,
Yeah.
like being a child in like Mexico and Guatemala has got to be pretty fucking rad because you get ghost stories all the time.
It's like
I was gonna
growing
put that
up
out
in
there.
Germany. It's like, don't go in the woods or the werewolf will eat you.
Yeah, I wish I had that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just like, watch out for the woman who will eat you if you go outside.
Well, in all fairness, I grew up in the 80s in Vicksburg, and we had this whole don't go out and play or, the crazy guy will come and kidnap you and drown you in the river. Because we had that happen.
Well, we're also seeing, like, this is the fundamental reason why we see those TikToks where the dude's like, La Llorona!
Dios dia! Or Dios mia! Sorry.
Because you grow up being told, like, there is a woman who will drown you if you go by the river.
Yes, and then,
Stay away from the
dirt road
river.
by the river. Here she is.
So Venezuela has a variation in which she is the spirit of a woman who died of sorrow upon the murder of her children, either at her hand or at the hand of her family.
Interesting. I'm just wondering, I don't know. It's just really difficult to make jokes when a woman repeatedly commits or is victimized by child murder. And should I just start making fart noises every now and again to lighten the mood?
I think we need a soundboard.
Yeah.
I think we need a soundboard at some point. Throw some
Like the
Arnold
Jar Jar
Schwarzenegger
Binks.
grunts, like a Tim Allen. Huh?
Yeah, or
Somewhere
like a
in there.
button that just, who's your daddy and what does he do?
Exactly. So, of course, like the United States has its own version as well. So, in the United States, the tale takes more of an amalgamated quality of, being said to children as a warning against playing near water and from wandering off too far. Again, kind of similar to some of the situations in Mexico.
Right.
Now, one thing I wasn't able to dig up much of yet, but was mentioned in like a paper or two that I read for this, is that some interpretations of La Llorona relate to the Chumash Nation of Southern California, which links her to a creature known as the Nunasis. I butchered that pronunciation, Nunasis.
Sure.
This entity features a cry similar to a newborn baby, not unlike Fae Tales of Ireland.
This sounds so... It reminds me of Crybaby Bridges, where you go out at night on the bridge and you hear the cries of a drowned infant, like an infant that drowned, and you hear it crying. Have you ever heard of the Crybaby Bridges?
I have not.
Really? They're all over the country. You can find different bridges where if you walk out at night, you hear a baby crying.
Oh, I live in a desert. There aren't a lot of needs for bridges in a desert.
Okay, fair. But that being said, I also just want to throw in...
Right, to lighten the mood a little
Yeah,
bit.
because fuck.
But yeah,
More dead
infanticide.
babies. Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, infanticide is universal because, again, it's like you're living, on less than subsistence, food, and a baby comes along you can't afford to raise that child in like the 1500s. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's discounted a lot that they're kind of and you see it in nature too.
Yeah.
That, animals will
They'll
regularly
eat a baby.
Yeah. They'll eat or somehow, well, I mean, I'm sure they'll eat it in just every way because it's just, free nutrients there.
Yeah.
But
I made you. I'll take you back.
and it's as terrible as it sounds. It is what's an evolutionary, boon.
Darwinism kind of.
So here's the thing. One baby is just going to grow up to be, one person. Or a person that can make babies can make more. So which one is kind of, quote unquote, more important to the species?
It depends. You talking about here in the South?
I'm saying I'm saying in a macro species.
In an evolutionary sense.
A breeder is kind of, and we do kind of have it, ass backwards in some ways, but I'm not going to diss on anybody for, wanting to save their baby because,
Yeah. No,
just,
totally. But
yeah, like long story short, every fucking culture has here's the bridge where the babies are thrown.
And there's also a lot of, postpartum shit that gets, really, maligned and understood.
Right. And I'm just going to ask if either of you guys ever read a really interesting pamphlet by Jonathan Swift called A Modest Proposal.
Kevin, I believe I've heard of that pamphlet.
It's a pamphlet.
Pamphlet.
It's
got an F in there.
It's a pamphlet.
It's got an F. It's a
pamphlet. I assigned that for my English 101 for a couple of semesters, and the students didn't really understand it, and it made me sad, I stopped assigning it.
Wow. I mean, look, I was a shit teenager, and reading that, I was like, what the fuck is this?
I read it, and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Some
it's one of the funniest essays. It's one of the funniest, yeah.
Just imagine some jaded-ass college student reading it going, whatever. I've read worse on Reddit.
I've seen worse. I was on Style Project. Thank you.
This doesn't go far enough. We should talk about eating the child's mother.
Look, yes, but how do you prepare the child?
What seasoning should you use? It should be Iron Chef Baby.
The funny thing is that is mentioned, how to cook the child is mentioned in the essay.
Oh, that's true.
Right. The pamphlet,
it's been
as
about
Kevin pronounced it. The pamphlet.
The pamphlet.
It's a pamphlet.
Pamphlet. There you go.
Shut up.
It's been a couple of decades since I've read a modest proposal.
Now back to what we were talking about, which is
every
infanticide
culture
and
has. Yeah, every culture has its baby disposal thing that happens.
Ghost fanticide.
Yeah. So
they have their own pamphlets.
I did mention the Fae, and I bring this link up because, as we've seen with so many cultures worldwide, similar archetypes seem to exist and develop separately from one another. And it's in their differences that they feel more like linked entities.
Right.
Even though maybe the Banshee is a completely different kind of wailing woman from La Llorona, it's in those differences that makes them feel more real. I've always kind of equated this to for example, pyramids in Egypt versus pyramids in South America.
Right, there's still pyramids.
Mm-hmm. But it feels like they could be there could have been someone who gave them knowledge. I don't believe that alien intervention, but maybe there was I don't know.
Previous culture, right.
Yeah, something like that. Something in the cultural memory, or maybe there was an architect who traveled the world.
Sure.
Samurai Jack trained around the world, and
or
the titular Samurai Jack.
Or Quetzalcoatl. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. I hate to bring up serial killers again, but there are a lot of serial killers, and they all operate differently, but they all do the same thing. They all kill.
Mm-hmm. So, which gets to I don't want to say there's a genetic predisposition for serial killing, but there is a cultural one that seems to manifest.
Right.
So, anyway, so it's in these differences that they feel more like linked entities. In that sense, this archetype of the wailing woman is a cultural element that develops across isolated populations.
Yes.
So, here are a couple of examples. So, the Slavic Rusalka is one example of the wailing woman, about as far removed from Mexico as you can go.
Yeah.
Now, this entity also has regional variations, such as those in Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, and the Czech Republic.
Interesting.
Basically, the Rusalka are drowned, vengeful spirits of women who either committed suicide or were murdered, often due to an unwanted pregnancy.
Interesting.
Now, again, this is like if you're a rich landowner in like 14th century Ukraine, right? And your mistress, is pregnant, things happen. It's an unfortunate reality about how women are treated at these times.
Yes.
So, and the fact that like this develops into a story makes sense, just like how this developed in Mexico. So, fittingly, actually, we're covering this topic at the right time because usually the Rusalkai were considered to be at their peak activity during Rusalka week in early June.
Uh-oh.
For a time, it was a tradition not to swim during this time, lest you fall victim to one of these wailing water women.
Now, is that what the www in a URL stands for? Is wailing water women? So
I was going to say that's what the pulse setting of a shower head's for.
Ah, okay, because I was going to say, I'm going to go to wailingwaterwomen.google.com and try to find out that information.
So, here's another example.
Okay.
The land of whimsy, Germany, also features a folktale, Die Weissfrau, that dates back to 1846 about a ghostly woman dressed in white, of which multiple other cultures have similar figures to her. The White Lady stories often share elements similar to La Llorona or the Slavic Rusalka.
So, Die Weissfrau, that is basically the white woman.
Yeah, the white woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just trying to remember my German.
Yeah. Again, like, I know die, or is it D? Is it D or die?
I've heard both.
Yeah, I think it's die because I keep thinking of that Sideshow Bob had that tattoo, Die Bart Die.
Or
and it would translate it to the Bart the.
Yes. Or Die Fledermaus.
Yeah.
The flying mouse, yeah.
We also have the tale of Lamia in the world of the ancient Greeks. As Lamia was a woman who had an affair with Zeus, the ultimate fuckboy. I mean, he is.
He is. Yeah. I'm going to turn myself into a goose and go after this woman.
So Hera learns of the affair, smites all of Lamia's children, and then Lamia goes on to a long career of child smiting herself.
I'm just going to say it. Zeus is the John Legend of the ancient world.
I was going to say Nick Cannon.
Okay, that too.
Yeah, like how many kids is that dude up to now? 18?
Something like that. I think I'm one of them. There was an accident with a contraceptive and a time machine. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of the Greeks, we also have some connection to the sirens.
Ooh.
Now, according to a piece by Robert Barakat in a 1969 write-up in the Journal of American Folklore, specifically, Barakat associates the sirens with the Aztec goddess Chiaquatl and suggests Chiaquatl is part of the inspiration for La Llorona. Okay,
I mean, that's plausible.
Yeah, like, again, I'm not going to dive too deep into that. So, now, this is going to get fun. This is my favorite part of this. One particularly wild paper I found was by Ed Walraven, published in a 1991 edition of the journal Western Folklore. And it makes some pretty wild associations I needed to share here.
Okay.
This was an imperative. I needed to share this.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Folklore evolves, right?
It does, yeah.
Like phantom black dogs, we see that like there's like some sort of evolutionary concurrent
Right.
version of that. Any like folktale has the way it evolves.
And I mean, look at Mothman. Mothman started as a figure of fright and has become like a LGBTQ plus icon. And it evolves. It's become, I mean, people want him to eat their ass at a Denny's.
Just at a Denny's?
It's always Denny's, dude.
It's always Denny's. Denny's is open 24 hours, and so's my ass for Mothman. Anyway.
But a Waffle House.
No, man. You don't want to get
Waffle
your ass
House is
eaten at
like,
a Waffle House.
No, the Waffle House
do.
is like the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, no. I
The
could
Jersey
see,
Devil's like,
Swamp Ape ate my ass out.
No.
Waho.
No, I got a quick and horrid hand job from the Jersey Devil at a Waffle House.
yeah,
Kevin,
just sitting at the counter with
Kevin,
a joint. Just
there aren't any Wahos up in Jersey.
Yeah, but the Jersey Devil, he migrates.
he gets around.
I go down to Florida every year.
So, Walraven notes that variations of the tale of La Llorona in a more modern context of like 30 years ago, which is weird to fucking think about, right?
Yeah, it's still happening, yeah.
Suggests a new haunting ground for La Llorona. Dumps and landfills.
Okay.
Why might that be?
Don't know.
Dumpster babies.
Hell yeah! Woo! Dumpster babies! Fuck, we are in the money now, boy.
Dumpster babies, they don't have dreams to come true.
Prom night dumpster babies. You've seen that
Fuck,
song,
man.
right?
Yeah, it's gonna get kind of wacky, wackadoo, wackety schmackety. So,
Boy.
I wasn't able to like copy and paste this from the PDF, so I just literally had to take like a screen snip and paste it in the document.
I see that.
One could argue successfully that placing an unwanted infant or infants in the trash, not drowning, may have become the preferred method of ridding oneself of them. For several reasons, this approach neatly addresses the shift in population to urban areas. It must be recalled that the population which has shifted to urban areas was a few generations ago rural in nature, not only in the United States, but also in Mexico and most of Central and South America.
Right.
It is hard to drown one's children in the bustle of a city without being noticed. The facelessness of the big city also addresses the need for anonymity by those who would do away with their children. Yeah, you had a thought here?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it is pretty fucking. I mean, it's pretty fucking hard to drown a baby in a puddle in today's cities.
I'm going to refrain from making a comment because I feel like you probably could do it.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
Maybe New Orleans.
Anyway, let's get back to Walraven here.
Yes, please do, please.
Moreover, the convenience of municipal trash dumpsters with regularly scheduled pickups guarantees unwanted items will soon be, quote, out of sight, out of mind. The symbolism of the dumpster cannot be overlooked either. These unromantic receptacles stand ready to take whatever one does not want, that which is undesirable. A baby left in the dumpster is clearly a baby unwanted.
Shit.
So he's out of line, but he's right.
God damn it! Don't do the Anthony Mackie thing.
Right. Well, this is incredibly fucked up. Maybe among the most fucked up things I have ever brought up on this podcast. It also makes a lot of sense as cultural tales evolve.
Yeah, okay, fair. I got two things to note about this. Number one, I didn't think we'd get to comedy in this one. Number two, it's just making me wish I'd gone to my prom.
Fuck. How do you feel about this theory, Mike?
La Llorona the dumpster diver, baby.
Well, yeah. I don't know. It's pretty fucked up.
But he posits that image of like why we might see La Llorona encounters in the city
because of dumpster babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I could see it. When does she combine with a raccoon?
Fuck.
Like it'll be a raccoon in a white dress screaming for babies.
I don't know.
God, this is so fucked up.
I love this.
Now, in my notes here, I put it gets even better, though, but it doesn't. It actually gets a lot worse.
It doesn't get better. It just gets. Mm-hmm. It gets, though.
So, I'm going to continue reading from Walraven's text here.
Okay.
This is a wild fucking essay. You gentlemen have to read. It's good. It is a good essay. Very thought-provoking, but also just what the fuck. I don't get shocked easily. That's the thing.
But this did it, huh?
Yeah, this is one of those where I'm like,
Damn.
should you have written this?
You spent so much time wondering if you should. You didn't stop to think if you should.
Mm-hmm. So here we go with Walraven again, the psychopath. He seems like a reasonable guy, so I should put that out. Anyway,
Sure, okay, yeah.
Beyond abandonment and trash dumpsters, American children are also linked by other imagery to the ideas of garbage or refuse. Teeming refuse, one wonders?
Teaming.
In 1985, many parents were dismayed by the introduction of a line of children's trading cards, collectible, ironically, not disposable, called Garbage Pail Kids.
Son of a bitch.
The cards depicted cartoon figures of the children.
Oh, God damn. Mike's just staring in shock. Fucking, oh my God. This motherfucker.
Didn't see this one coming, motherfucker, did you?
I didn't, honestly.
So David, that's a bit before your time, isn't it? Garbage Pail Kids?
I did have Garbage Pail Kids
Okay.
cards.
I was wondering.
See, because I was collecting them when they were new.
Yeah.
God, this. Now,
What's beautiful is that note about irony.
Ironically, not disposable.
Yeah, and here's another thing. You know, there's also like the idea of children being disposable. You know, especially after birth, really comes down to the Republican line, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, the funny thing is, I think all of us knew the joke about Garbage Pail Kids was about dumping babies in a garbage can. Mm-hmm. I know in my school we did because we all. Well, see, a lot of us had older sisters.
Here's the thing: I never heard of garbage kids. It was always toilet babies.
What the fuck?
Well, you hear the stories about like
teen somebody
girls,
shit a baby.
Yeah, teen girls like you have the baby in the toilet and just leave it there.
See, that is that. Okay, why isn't La Llorona going after that?
Yeah, there's
I've never seen La Llorona in a high school toilet.
Yeah,
yeah, like climbing out of like Sadako out of the TV.
Yeah, Sadako. Yeah,
toilet in a Denny's.
It reminds me of one of my favorite lines from the Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
Dr. Venture saying, "Oh, who am I kidding? My looks are going down the drain faster than an unwanted pregnancy on prom night."
Oh, shit.
Right?
Oh, God. Okay.
Incredible show.
Yeah, but please continue with this god-awful man's ideas.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, quoting him again, evidence suggests the ghostly figure will appear. The folklore pump seems primed. The La Llorona legend is deeply ingrained in the Hispanic culture. The growing Hispanic population is moving to more urban settings. Those hearing stories of a La Llorona-like mother wanting to rid herself of her children will find abandonment in a corner dumpster in the city much more believable and appropriate to the surroundings than drowning. If La Llorona is looking for her dead children, she should turn up at the city dump if their bodies were left in a trash dumpster. Oral tradition seems to be ready to take baby in a dumpster stories into the realm of contemporary legends.
I hate this. I just want to get that out there. It's hilarious. It's insane, but I hate this.
But it also makes a lot of fucking sense in the worst possible way.
It does. I mean, damn.
Right. So, you know, there are, of course, other wailing women. We will get to them, explore their stories more deeply in future episodes.
Okay, yeah, but this motherfucker's still linking La Llorona to Garbage Pail Kids.
Right. It's just... I knew I had to kind of close things on that.
Is she where the Garbage Pail Kids and the Garbage Pail Kids movie came from?
Fuck, I don't know.
Because they never went over how they got in the garbage can. Are you saying La Llorona dumped them in there?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I just want to know, though, is the Wailing Woman's husband Waylon Jennings?
Oh. Just a good old boy.
You know, we've talked about throwing babies in dumpsters, but that was by far the most disgusting thing I've heard of.
Waylon Jennings. God damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, so dead babies, there you go. Dead babies and wailing women, if we need a title for an episode. No, I think La Llorona works as a title.
La Llorona's fine. That way people know it's about Garbage Pail Kids.
Right. So, with that, I wrap things up here in a pretty tonally wild episode.
This has been tonally inventive.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot more we could say about all of this, but I also think it is good to maybe leave some of this open to interpretation and introspection. A lot of tough questions here. Why has La Llorona persisted? Why does this archetype of the wailing woman exist in unrelated countries? And what does this say about how women are viewed historically? Is she a sympathetic figure? Was it bad for me to close out with a discussion of dumpster babies? Yeah. What do you gentlemen think? We've gotten kind of the end here. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that you couldn't not end on dumpster babies, which sounds like a Jim Henson show.
Right.
Like we said you were singing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, the archetype is there for a reason. It is shared in these multiple cultures, and it is for some reason ingrained in the human psyche, along with the trickster and the hero. And for what reason, I have no idea, other than an echo of the guilt men have for inflicting horrible things on women since time immemorial.
So you're saying that men get the hero and the trickster, and women get the postpartum depression crazy woman.
Yeah, pretty much. That's.
Yep.
I'm not saying. I'm saying that. Oh God, you're making it sound like I'm saying that. That's
what you said, though.
Yeah. Well, no, because the hero can be a woman. The trickster can be a woman.
Well, not traditionally.
Heiress.
Not 99% of the time.
Well, you're both missing one of the major archetypes of women historically, as fucked up as it is, and that's the seducer.
Okay,
well,
yeah, fair.
Okay, but that still dovetails into my point of the good attributes are men and the bad ones are women.
Patriarchy.
Well, I appreciate a good seduction, so.
Well, but seduction is typically considered a appeal to vice and appeal to sin.
Also, Kevin, don't you ever fucking say that to me again.
I was wondering if you ever heard that.
But
oh God.
Yeah.
But no, Mike, you are right. We have this horrible tendency to, in our mythology, assign corruption roles to women.
Yeah.
The trickster is like a teacher.
Yeah.
The hero is the hero.
Yeah, the trickster is like, he may be kind of bad, but he's a bad boy, but he's like laugh.
Yeah, or he's like, the dude on the Harley that teaches you a lesson.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the woman, it all boils down to Eve and original sin.
Or Lilith.
Man. Okay, you know what? We'll talk about that another day. I want to talk about some biblical stuff eventually because I've got a theory.
We could probably do like a good deep dive into biblical books as episodes, man.
We're gonna. I've got some shit. So yeah, that was La Llorona. Hope it was enlightening, and also, again, like a really weird, tonally strange episode because we have a fascinating human interest story. We have this like interesting archetypal figure, and then we get to the fucking Garbage Pail Kids. Fucking dumpster babies and Garbage Pail Kids. And La Llorona popping up like a shit-covered Sadako out of a toilet.
Motherfucker.
Oh, wow. I wish I hadn't said that. So thank you for listening, everyone. This may be the last episode, considering how badly this went. But we want to say how much we appreciate all of you, not just our patrons. We appreciate all of you. If you've been listening to this show, holy crap, I didn't really think we'd get listeners. I was just doing this because it was fun, and I wanted my friends to be involved. And thank you, all of you.
We're creeping close to episode 100 at this point, right?
We are. This is like episode 77, I think. Holy shit.
While we're at that, then what I want to do is I want to ask our listeners who are like on the Discord, if you go back and re-listen to some of the older episodes, find moments that you really like. Because I think for episode 100, I'd like to do like a best of.
Oh yeah, we should do like a partial clip show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And talk about doing the show and things we've learned and things we wish we hadn't learned, like
right,
Llorona and Garbage Pail Kids.
Right.
So, again, thank you for listening. If you'd like to find out more about the show or take part in our community, you can find links to all that fun stuff at supernatpod.rocks. You can find us on Mastodon at supernatpod at horrorhub.club. And you can find links to our individual personal Masto accounts in the bio for that account. David, have you got anything you'd like to plug this week?
Yeah, like number one, if you want to come after me for this episode, come get me on Mastodon, motherfuckers. But no, I'm doing comics and stuff again pretty regularly. Awesome. I'm going to be updating Cosmic Dash pretty consistently for the next few weeks because I'm at like a break point in the anthology story.
Yeah.
So, it's I'm very excited about this weekend's page that I'm working on in particular. I've planted a lot of seeds. They're starting to kind of like bloom. So cool. Yeah, definitely go to cosmicdash.com probably Saturday night to check out this really cool new page I'm doing.
Cool. So basically, if you're listening to it now, it'll be like on premiere day, it'll be up tonight, or it'll probably be up by the time you're hearing this, whenever.
Yeah.
Mike, what have you got to spotlight this week?
What do I have? Nothing in the pipe. I was not prepared.
Well, son, you got one job.
I've been sleeping on the job. No.
Well, no, you've got something you're doing this weekend, which is our next distraction hole.
I will be hosting the distraction hole, so get your ear holes on the distraction hole.
Just a hole full of ears.
Yeah, or the ear full of holes.
Which is like a cryptid legend. Like, I heard tales of the ear hole. The hole full of ears. Have fun editing this, by the way.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. This is going to be a hell of an editing job tomorrow. Fortunately, I don't think I'm going to have a problem waking up, considering I'm probably going to have another dream where we're trying to revive Paul from the dead, and Cheech and Chong show up on a old railroad pump cart.
First of all, what the fuck? Secondly, I'm like still recording. Like, we didn't say goodbye or anything. So.
Yep. Nope. No, we haven't. That's in there.
We still have the outro to do.
Yep. I know.
Like, do we have like any X or anything?
No. That's on. We only do that on Weekend Weird. Yeah.
I'm sorry. We just do it so often.
Yeah. So, all right. So you didn't have anything to plug.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it. We will see you guys next week for a Weekend Weird, and after that, I'm probably going to be talking about the Archons. Ooh. So, until then, everyone stay safe and stay frosty. Goodbye.
La Llorona.
Night.
¿Dónde es aquí?
My Llorona.
Aquí es aquí. Es muy bueno. I just did my everything I know in Spanish.
En su casa.
What was it? Los pantalones están en su casa. The pants are on the chair in your house.